Welcome back to part 6 of the van conversion video. This is where we left part 5. If you haven't seen that video, please click on my channel. You can see a little gnome in the van there finishing the walls. As we begin working on the ceiling, you can see there's still parts of the wall that need to be done, but they're quite fidgety and they're just something that was going to take a little bit of time, and I think we were just so excited to get the ceiling in that we just went straight for it. So the first process, same as the walls, was to put the timber battens up. From there we put the plywood onto the battens. It was quite difficult with the space of the van, as you'll know if you've ever done a van build before, or if you ever plan on doing one in the future. A lot of the time you just have to try and make things work as best as you can. I didn't go into this with a particular game plan. I had an idea of how I wanted things to look, but I just tried my best to make it work. There you can see that I've just added foam into the top part of the ceiling to contain the aircon at the front of the van, and then I've just tried to cut it back with a blade. You'll see us touch back on that later on in the video, so if you have any questions with that, let me know. But the most important part with the ceiling was just to try and batten everything out and then cover the ceiling with plywood so that we could then attach the blinds to the ceiling. You'll notice a lot of the timber I'm using is quite awkwardly shaped, and it was because that we were trying to save money and trying our best to budget on this van build. So I was reusing pieces of wood that I used on the walls. I was doing my best to make it work. So it's not the prettiest, but the nice part about this part of the ceiling is that you won't see it in the final van build. It's purely there to serve a purpose. This is where we come back to the foaming. So a lot of people who have a Toyota Hiace who want to keep the aircon in, like me, are trying to wonder what they can do to fill that gap. For us, I thought it would be a great idea to foam the vents because the aircon originally ran from the front of the van all the way to the rear. So what we did is we removed half of the ceiling that you probably saw in the last video, and then where there would be a gap where the aircon would run through, we just filled it with foam, cut it back, and we eventually painted it. These were the blinds that we used for the ceiling. They're actually really nice. They just required a little bit of work to get them to look as good as they did. You could see that the initial blinds that we bought had holes on either side that needed to be cut out, otherwise we'd have loads of weird random holes on our blinds and on our ceiling. So I cut either end of the blind down so you would no longer have any holes on the blinds themselves, so when they fit onto the ceilings it would look quite smooth, it would look nice, and it would make a nice finish. Those are all the scrap pieces I had to throw away, but this was still a really good deal. These blinds came the same way I got the ones for the walls. I went to Bunnings, we found them in the clearance section, we thought they'd look real nice. I think they cost me $5 or $10 for a pack of these blinds. I might have bought 2 or 3 packs to finish all of the ceilings. So you can imagine how much money I saved making that. But you can see it slowly coming together. The white walls, the timber look ceiling. For the price that we paid, it's a real nice finish. Before we could complete the ceiling look, I had to cut the finishing trim for the roof fan. The roof fan I did a couple of videos ago, I believe, so if you haven't seen that one, check it out. But this came with the roof fan, and this is to give it the finishing look. And this is something that I had to cut down, measured, marked, and then we tried to fit it onto the roof fan around our ceiling. We thought it was going to be super simple putting it in. As you can see, I was in absolute shock when Jen was struggling to fit that, so I thought I'd give it a red hot go myself. And as you can see, I sped this up about 50 times, and I struggled hardcore to get this trim in. Eventually got it in, and there was a few screws that needed to be put in, so same process as everything else. We drill out the timber first, we put the screws in, but you can see it gave a real nice finish. It complemented the walls, it complemented the ceiling, and from there it allowed me to finish the rest of the ceiling with the blinds. From there, it was just a case of finishing all of the awkward spots that I'm sure you can spot around the van as you're looking at this video. We got the majority of it in, and it was quite easy, it was very fun, but it got to a point where we had these small awkward corners that if you're ever doing a van build yourself, you'll find you'll get to this point where you have edges, corners that aren't exact, and it just becomes a case of doing your best to fill these gaps in. So I cut a big piece of timber down, a timber deck I believe. I cut it down as best as I could, and I just had to glue it in place. And although you're not going to see this timber, so it doesn't need to be pretty, you just need something that you can shoot your blinds to, or whatever finishing product you've got on the walls, whatever finishing product you've got on the ceiling. As you can imagine, you can't just fit it where you want it. You normally need to fit it to something, and fitting it to the wall, the metal of the van itself, normally isn't a great idea. So we had to get a little bit creative. I trimmed the timber down, I covered it in glue, and we waited for it to set. And this just gave me somewhere, you can see I pumped it with heaps of glue, as much glue as I could, just so it didn't come loose at any point. And again, it doesn't look pretty, but this is something that you will not see in the van build. It's just something that has to be there. But that gave us something that we could kind of shoot the rest of the blinds to. But this didn't come without its own problems. You can see here with the glue that I was using, we got it everywhere. It went on my arm. This was a problem in itself. After we had spent about 24 hours trying to remove the liquid nails glue off my arms, and we had been successful, we continued with the van build, and it was just a case of trying to fill in the awkward spots, awkward corners that you're left with sometimes when you're doing a van build. So a lot of this was just getting the blinds that we had, attempting with our best efforts to cut them down to size, shooting them in place. Some of these pieces were so small that even with our tiny pin nail gun, when we tried to shoot them onto the wall, they were cracking every single time. So a couple of these had to be glued on, and yeah, 6 months, 8 months later, I can tell you they're still all in place. But obviously not an ideal technique if you can help it, but sometimes needs must. From here, we go back to the foaming. So this is what I was talking about before, where you get these awkward spots, and I know other people who've done a Toyota Hiace van build have struggled with this area. Some people try and get timber and cut it to shape and attempt to fit it. I thought the best option would be to tape around all of the beautiful blinds that we just fit and fill the area with expanding foam. Sometimes it's just about doing the best you can with the resources you have, and I think with the foam that we used after we cut it back and painted it, as you'll see in a second, it actually turned out real nice, so highly recommend. Keep an eye on my channel for the next part in the van build series, and if you have any questions, leave them below. I'm 100% going to be completing a Q&A at some point, so any questions you have, let me know. I'll do my best to answer them in that video. Bye bye.